Hi, my name is Laura George, and welcome to the first vlogcast from the Peace Pentagon Hub. The Peace Pentagon is a conference and training center for progressive programs and sacred activism. The Peace Pentagon is located at the Oracle Institute campus in Independence, Virginia, and our hub vlogs focus on sectors of society where everyday synergistic solutions are emerging to help us build a new world. Today, I'm doing a hub vlog for the peace building and relations sector. And with me is David Swanson, who's a thought leader in this field. Good morning, David.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. It's raining. It's a yucky day, but it's really good to be with you. Let me tell you a little bit about David. He is the founder of World Beyond War. It's a global movement to end all wars. He's also the author of War is a Crime, War is Never Just, and When the World Outlawed War, which to me is seminal reading for anyone involved in the peace-building movement. David has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, and he's a leading activist to abolish war. He blogs at davidswanson.org, warisacrime.org, and he has a weekly radio show at Talk Nation Radio. And his main website is worldbeyondwar.org. So David, I simply adore your book, When the World Outlawed War, because it tells the amazing history of how the United States actually led the anti-war movement after World War I. In total, more than 60 countries, including the US, France, Great Britain, Germany, Japan, even Iran and Iraq, signed on to this treaty. And it was signed by our President Calvin Coolidge in 1929 and remains the law of the land today. So please tell our audience a little bit more about this international treaty and why we're not following it.
Yeah, I think Iran may have been under the name Persia at the time. This was a while back. And I'm very much looking forward, by the way, Laura, to being down there at your facilities this spring and seeing you at another event before then. But this was a time of incredible energy for the peace movement in the United States and around the world. The years after World War I, after Armistice Day, which people celebrated as what they hoped would be the ending of wars. And now we may see a militaristic parade of weapons in Washington, D.C. to mark the 100th anniversary. That needs to be stopped and protested. But this treaty that came about after a decade of activism following the end of World War I banned war. It's called the KelloggBriand Pact, named after a couple of people named Kellogg and Briand, and it bans war. And most big countries on the globe are party to it, and it's never been ended. And so it's something we can hold up and point to and demand compliance with, but also learning from the people who created it could be of great advantage to people working for peace today.
A part of this history that I found particularly poignant, especially considering the Women's March movement, is that after World War I, it was suffragettes and women's peace organizations that really helped tip the scale in favor of the KelloggBriand Pact. And you write in your book that when the treaty was pending before the Senate, over 12 million women ignited into action. I just love that part of the story. And it reminds me too of after the Civil War when Julia Ward Howe wrote the Mother's Day Proclamation. I want to read just a teeny part of that, because many people don't know what Mother's Day is about. She wrote, "Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We, the women of one country, will be too tender of those of another to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs." So my question, David, is, do you see a special role for women today in the anti-war movement?
Well, I think there is one, whether I see it or not. There are women's groups, Code Pink and WILPF and WAND, and numerous small and local and U.S. and foreign and global women's groups for peace that are doing tremendous work, just as they did in helping to create the KelloggBriand Pact. Many of them having set peace aside during the war to push for the right to vote, and having achieved that, came back to it and moved forward on demanding peace. I think, the role of women is to stress those values that you just read as the values that should be for Mother's Day and for Father's Day as well. And the role for men is to say we need to drop this, disgusting, horrendous, destructive notion of what it means to be a man, and make what it means to be a man to be intelligent and compassionate and gentle and loving. Those need to become masculine values as well. And to the extent that women can lead us in that direction, we need to follow that lead.
Well, we're really proud here at Oracle Campus to have a local Women's March group, and we also have a local group for World Beyond War. So we're doing our part. So let's talk a little more about World Beyond War so that our listeners who are interested can help you create this culture of peace.
Well, World Beyond War is a global movement started mostly in the United States, but rapidly becoming globally organized and run, with people having signed this declaration of peace at worldbeyondwar.org in over 150 countries, trying to get over 175, which is where the U.S. troops are thanked for watching sports when I turn on the television. We need to be in at least as many places and at least as organized and at least as effective, but we're growing rapidly. We're doing lots of educational events. We're working on divestment from weapons dealers, opposition to and closing of foreign military bases, advancing the use of law, the rule of law rather than the rule of force. There are endless projects people can get involved in individually or with local chapters, or starting local chapters at worldbeyondwar.org.
Yes, we encourage everyone to go to the website and either join a chapter if there is one near you, or start one in your location, which is what we did here in Independence.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your upcoming debate with Pete Kellner. It's going to take place this Monday. And Pete is a really interesting individual in his own right. He's a former Army infantryman, and he was a professor at the U.S. Military Academy. You and Pete are going to debate the topic, is war ever justifiable? And I was wondering if you could share with us why you think that even defensive wars are not acceptable.
Well, yes, we're going to do this debate at Radford near you, and then the next evening at Eastern Mennonite in Harrisonburg. We'll see how the second compares to the first. I'm very much looking forward to it, because I think this is how we get more people into the room who don't already agree with me, and then hopefully, if I don't flub it up too badly, persuade some of them, at least partially, to move in the direction of considering the idea that wars are not acceptable ever. And I have tried drafting my opening remarks for the debate to fit into 20 minutes, and I have to cram and crunch, so I can't fit it into 2 minutes here for you, but I can, hit maybe 1 point or two. One is to point out that most people who think there's been a justifiable war once or maybe 3 times out of the many dozens of wars that the United States has been involved in still think that we should be dumping over $1 trillion a year into preparing in case there's a justifiable war next week or next year. And that money, that misdirection of that spending, kills more people than all of the wars, because 3% of that money could end starvation on Earth. 1% of that money could end the lack of clean drinking water everywhere on Earth. We would have a chance against climate chaos with a fraction of that money. It's unfathomable amounts of money being put into generating more of the wars that almost everybody agrees are not justified. So war's not just an incident, it's an institution. and it's this myth that there's going to be a good one someday that justifies the institution, that creates the momentum for all the clearly unjustifiable wars. So that's the very beginning of an answer that clearly would not satisfy somebody who didn't already, see their way toward agreeing with me. But I'm going to give a much longer answer in the upcoming debates.
Yes, so people should join you, and I'm going to be at the Radford one. Again, that's going to be Monday, the 12th, and then the next day, Tuesday the 13th, there'll be a second debate at the Eastern Mennonite University in Harrisonburg. So people who wanted to join the debates, please come either visit his website, or it's also at the Oracle website for the details. Okay, so I've been saving the big question for last. And that is, what do we do about the Trump presidency? I know that you and your friend, former colleague, Congressman Dennis Kucinich, filed articles of impeachment against President George Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney. And in retrospect, Bush and Cheney are starting to appear like chump change compared to Trump. Therefore, tell us, how do we combat the many risks associated with the Trump presidency, particularly, you mentioned when we started, the recent reports that he wants to have military parades, that he wants to start testing our nuclear arsenal again, and even that he's authorized a new nuclear warhead, the first in 34 years. Let me add that my father, James George, was the director of the Arms Control Agency under President Ronald Reagan, which is sort of ironic. My dad helped negotiate the SALT treaties, and arguably Trump is violating these very treaties that have been in place, again, for over 30 years. So David, what do we do about Trump?
Well, it's Trump, and it's everyone around him, and it's the institutions that have been getting worse and worse for decades. It's reached a point that has thankfully scared a number of people who should have been scared decades earlier, because Trump is threatening nuclear war, threatening to use nuclear war in response to all kinds of things that have nothing to do with war. Impeachment is one tool that's sitting there waiting to be used if we would use it. And the point of impeaching Bush or Cheney was not that Bush and Cheney were horrible individuals who never should have been born, but that they were given license to abuse powers in ways that no king or queen on earth, no dictator anywhere has ever had before. The amount of power and destructive force. And we said we don't dislike them as people. We wish them well. We hope they go golfing. We don't hate Republicans. If you do not impeach them, if you do not hold them accountable, these things will get worse. And they got worse under President Obama, who should have been impeached as well, and under President Trump. And so this notion that, well, we'll just let him get away with anything, even if it destroys the earth, pushes climate change past the point of no return, launches a nuclear war, creates a nuclear winter, eliminates the ability to grow crops for billions of people to eat. That's okay, because if we impeach him, the next guy's really bad too. Mike Pence. You got to be smart about these things. Yeah. Got to, destroy the world, but don't get rid of Trump and think it's just him because Mike Pence is bad too. Of course he is. But I would rather have, Dick Cheney. I would rather have, the devil as president in a world in which we had learned to hold them accountable and would hold the next person accountable as well, than have, Mahatma Gandhi as president with unlimited power and no accountability. That's the wrong way to go. So I'm still in favor of that tool of impeachment among many others that need to be used.
That's a really good point. If our checks and balances were still in place, we could take care of a burgeoning dictator. And the fact that the executive is completely out of control and Congress isn't doing its role is a huge problem right now. I'm just curious, before we close, do you see an answer lying in what we consider the current political process in the sense of voting Democratic, or do you think that we actually need a third party, that it's just not going to get solved otherwise?
Well, I don't know an easy way to build a third party. People have been saying, oh, let's build a third party for decades, and it hasn't happened yet. Obviously, just voting for Democrats accomplishes nothing whatsoever. These are the people giving Trump the bigger military, making, keeping him safe from impeachment their top task. I mean, when Rahm Emanuel said in January of '07, we're going to keep the Iraq war going so we can run against it again in '08. That was the attitude that you see now in Nancy Pelosi, and say, let's keep Trump in office so we can be the people who aren't Trump. Well, just electing people who aren't Trump accomplishes nothing. What we need is to get the money out of the system, get the corrupt media out of the system, get the gerrymandering out of the system, get verifiable voting systems. I mean, we need all kinds of systemic reforms that would then allow a decent person to run in one of the major parties, in a third party, or as an independent. And we're not going to vote ourselves those reforms. We're going to get them through creative, nonviolent actions.
I agree. And that's one of the main reasons why we launched the Peace Pentagon Hub. We want to get the news out there in a way that can activate people regionally. And we're really pleased that you joined us today, David. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely a pleasure to explore the peace building sector with you. And again, for our listeners, please go to David's website. It's worldbeyondwar.org. And just a reminder, in April, David will be here with Professor Glenn Martin, who is spearheading the Earth Federation movement. They're going to be doing a weekend retreat at the Oracle campus. So we'd love for you to join us for that event. And if you're interested in learning more about the Peace Pentagon Hub, visit peacepentagon.net. There you'll find the action events and the news that we so sorely need to get us in a progressive and pluralistic marching mode. And lastly, if you're interested in living in a community with cultural creatives, please check out the Valley of Light community. That's the community we started on the Oracle campus in Independence, Virginia. And you can learn more about the Valley of Light at our other website, which is theoracleinstitute.org. David, thank you. I am looking so forward to you visiting us in just a couple months. And I'll see you on Monday at the debate.
Thanks. Look forward to it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.